The winner of this year's Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences is Richard Thaler, one of the leading figures in the field of behavioural economics. I'm joined by the FT's economics correspondent Gemma Tetlow to discuss the significance of Thaler's work. Gemma, thanks for joining me. The prize committee said they gave the prize to Thaler for his contributions to behavioural economics. Could you say a bit about the principal characteristics of this branch of economics?
Behavioural economics is essentially the branch of economics that tries to bring some insights from psychology into economic modelling. So trying to use the insights that psychologists have about the way that people think about things and the way they make decisions to help understand behaviour in the real world and help design policy to kind of take into account those behavioural aspects.
And what would you say is Thaler's main contribution to that field?
I mean, he's been one of the fathers of this field and really pointed out a number of quite key, perhaps common sense assumptions, but that really sort of challenged the way that traditionally economics has thought about some of these things. So, for example, the importance of limited self-controls. People find it difficult to make long-term decisions and are very focused on the short term. The fact that people really care about fairness in how, for example, businesses behave.
You've just alluded to the way in which behavioural economists like Thaler seek to undermine or at least drastically complicate assumptions traditionally made by economists about the way economic actors behave, rationally or not. How influential have Thaler's insights and those of other behavioural economists, do you think, been on the rest of the profession?
So, I mean, traditionally, economists have assumed, for sort of simplicity in doing their models, that people behave rationally. And economists have always known that people don't strictly behave rationally, but they assumed that any deviations were sufficiently small that it didn't really matter. But Thaler's insight was really to show that actually even quite small deviations from rationality can have big impacts on the way that people behave in the marketplace. And that really is starting to have a really core impact on the rest of the profession. Behavioural economics used to be quite a fringe, controversial field, and it's now a core part of what people will be doing in undergraduate economics.
And this work, and Thaler's in particular, is not just having an impact on the profession, it's having an impact, as you said earlier, on policy. Now, the Nobel has often gone in the past to economists doing highly technical mathematical work whose application to policy is not obvious, but that's absolutely not the case with Thaler, is it?
No, I think very unusually this is probably a Nobel Prize winner who'll be much more familiar to members of the general public outside the economics profession. I think he possibly the only economics Nobel Prize winner to have featured in a Hollywood movie, I think, up till now. So that he will be much more familiar, and he's certainly had a big impact with his ideas in policy making in the UK, in the US and many other countries.
Perhaps the idea that's had the biggest impact is this idea of the nudge. Can you say a bit about that?
So the nudge, which is a term that Richard Thaler and his colleague Cass Sunstein coined. The idea there is that you can shape people's behaviour by making things easy for them. So if you want them to make a particular choice, make that choice the easiest thing for them, to nudge them in the direction of doing that. And for example, this has come up in recent policy changes in the UK where we have automatic enrolment into pension schemes. So rather than people having to opt into a scheme, they now have to opt out of it. And that simple change just nudges people towards staying in the scheme rather than being out of it.
Gemma, I hope what you've said about Thaler's work is a nudge to those of our viewers who haven't read him to do so. Thank you very much.